Today I'm going to share and analyze with you 4 ways to get from C to G. So here's the full etude, and then I'm going to break down each progression individually. So our first progression is C to E9 add 2 to G add 9. So is this passing chord right here? So this is an E chord, and to understand the way that this progression works, first we need to discuss the function of E in the key of C. So in the key of C, right, it's very important to note that we have this G here, not a G sharp. The E chord is its third. And this is one of my favorite chords in the key of C because it uses this G sharp here, which is an outside tone. And also, functionally, this E chord usually goes to an A minor chord, so. Something like that, right? And yeah, I just love the pull of this G sharp up to the A. And that's what makes this progression in my mind so strong, because we have this inner line, this inner chromatic line here. But because this chromatic line is so strong, I decided to take this line, put it in the top of the chord progression. And then from there, because that voice lining is so strong, I can swing to another chord other than A minor. Really pretty. Something else interesting about this voicing here is that the lower structure here, this thing, this is kind of like a E7 sus 2/4 chord. And the reason why I go E7 sus 2/4, which has this F sharp and then A, is that I find it allows me to get more colors. And you're also going to notice that we're not repeating any tones in this chord voicing. I think it just adds a lot of nice color. Our next progression is C to B flat 7 sus 2/4 add 13 to B flat 6, then to G. Sounds like this. I usually try to approach the chord I want to get to, which is G, from whole step below, half step below, half step above, or whole step above. But here we're not doing any of that. And I think it's just interesting. It allows for different types of colors. So a little bit unusual in terms of my writing. But yeah, and then let's get into the chord here. So the way that this chord progression here works, we got this B flat 7/2/4 add 13 chord. But you could also think about it as an A flat major 7 chord over B flat. Now, usually I try to stay away from these symmetrical voicings like this, because this is a very basic way of outlining A flat major 7. It's obscured a little bit because we have the B flat in the bass, but usually instead of having something so symmetrical, and by that I mean third, 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 usually I would try to put 2 tones closer together, like that, or like something like that. because I find it a little more interesting. But the reason I do go with this shape, which is very simple, is because the next chord, basically I take this exact shape and I just move everything down by a step. And the voice leading there, I think, is just really nice. Our next progression is C to D7, add 4 over F sharp to G. Sounds like this. So yeah, this chord, I think this chord is really pretty. It's the most dissonant of the bunch, and I do always love dissonance. And so to understand the chord progression, we need to understand the function of the D chord in the key of C. So, key of C, we have these notes, and just like the E major chord having an outside tone, the D chord has an outside tone as well. This F sharp is really pretty and an unexpected quality. So yeah, the outside tone is great. But other than the outside tone, it's really a standard progression, because to get to this G chord, we're coming from its 5th. And that's just the most typical resolution you could find, 5-1, right? So I obscured the simplicity and the harmonic expectedness of the chord progression by firstly putting it in first inversion. So instead of having the D in the bass, we have the 3rd in the bass. So a little bit of a different quality. It feels less stable, less grounded. And if I just kept it as that one thing, it would sound like. But to me, that still sounds a little bit too traditional, perhaps. And so the next thing that I do is I have this. I keep the G on top. And this is a super dissonant note because the F sharp, which is in the bass here, really clashes with that G. It's a minor 2nd, but spread out over 1 octave. It still sounds pretty terrible, but I can justify it by filling in some of these notes here. And this D structure is so strong that to me it makes it so that we can justify this G on top and it doesn't sound too crazy. When I do play things like this, I feel like you need to back off on the volume a little bit, right? So instead of something like you approach it with a little bit of sensitivity. Sounds a little bit better. The whole concept behind this progression is to take something that is expected and tonal and to add a little bit of color and spice to it to make it sound unique and different. So our next chord progression is C to F sharp 13, to F6 sus4 add 9, to F minor 6 to G. So the first thing we got to talk about is the F minor chord. In the key of C, we have A's and not A flats. So the 4 chord is C to F to C again. Right? But just like the E chord with the G sharp or the D chord with the F sharp, we are also including an outside note, which is this A flat. So the F minor chord would sound like. And that's a really beautiful chord here. It's one of my favorites. but I feel like I overuse this sound a lot. So I was like, it makes sense to go from C to F minor to G, but how can I add additional colors or unexpected nature to it to make it sound more lush and more interesting? So instead of just going from C to F minor to G, I decided to use an approach chord, which is a nearby chord which usually resolves by step. And then past that, I add one more motion to add just a little bit of inner line movement, which I really like. And the thing that I do is this from so C and D stays the same, but the B flat and the G, they move down by step. And this is a pretty typical pattern. We're basically just going sus to minor. And this is a type of pattern that you can hear all over in music, to go from the sus to the minor or sus to the major. In the key of C, to get you to see it a little bit easier, something like. And it's a really nice way to add just a little bit more movement in the chord progression, and you can really do this at any moment in a progression. So put all together, we got upper approach chord, sus to minor, and then finally to the G. Talking more specifically, this F sharp major 13 chord, you'll notice that once again, there are no repeating notes. The way that this chord is structured, I think is really nice because it has this beautiful openness to it. And the way that we get that is because the lower structure here, all fifths. F sharp to C sharp is a fifth, C sharp to G sharp. And then on top of that, we have this really nice chord cluster, specifically the D sharp and F. You could think of it as a B major 7 sharp 11 chord, but instead we're on top of this F sharp bass. And I especially love the rub between the D sharp and the F, which is in the middle of this chord right here. So just like previously where we had the A flat major 7 over B flat, you can take even simple chord shapes like just A flat major 7 or B major 7 sharp 11 and recontextualize them by putting a different bass note. So this chord is a little fancier than very plain, a little bit more color. And same thing here. Versus just more standard. But with a different lower structure, it really recontextualized the sound. So yeah, I love this chord here. And then in the top voice here, we're really emphasizing this line. A very typical melody. I use it quite frequently. And so to navigate that, we then change with our different chords here. And then let's finally talk about the last thing that happens. I do this little thing here. So where does that come from? It's like a polychord, so we have C major in the lower structure. And on top of that, we place this E 7 add 2 thing. So on top of a regular major chord, a very jazz thing to do would be to add the Lydian sound, which is built off of the 2 major chord, which is that's a very typical sound, right? In my mind, really, I just took something that's more typical, which is D Lydian on top of C. I include one more outside tonality, and then I include a little bit of that distance to make it so that the dissonance is more palatable. And also, thematically, the first chord from this progression was we go from C to that E chord. And so I thought it would be fun if where we started, we go back to So we end with what we start with. All right, so that's the etude. If you learned something, please hit that subscribe button or give me a thumbs up. You can also comment and tell me which is your favorite chord. Also, I'm going to plan to put out more content like this, so if you have another chord that you would like to learn 4 ways to get to creatively, let me know. On my channel, I have 4 ways to get to F, I got 4 ways to get to G, and I got 4 ways to get to A minor. So in the key of C, if there's other chords you want to learn how to get to, please let me know in the comments. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.